Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. It's a little bit after 6 o'clock. And my name is Chip Cameron, and I'm going to serve as your facilitator for tonight's meeting. And in that role, I'll try to help all of you to have a productive meeting. And I want to welcome you all to the NRC public meeting. NRC is for the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And we're going to try not to use many acronyms at all tonight, but one you are going to hear is NRC, or Nuclear Regulatory Commission. You're also going to hear NEPA, that's National Environmental Policy Act. And you're also going to hear EIS, that stands for Environmental Impact Statement. And the meeting tonight is about the NRC's environmental review process to help the NRC to decide whether to grant a license to the Holtec International Company to construct and operate an interim spent fuel storage site in Lee County, New Mexico. And the NRC staff is here, and I'll introduce them in a few minutes. The NRC staff is here tonight to explain its license application review process to you. Not only the environmental review, but the safety review. Those are the two major components of the NRC review process. And after the NRC gives its presentations, gives its information to you, then the NRC wants to listen to your comments and your recommendations on something called the scope of the EIS. And the scope is a very simple concept. It's what should the NRC consider in putting together the environmental impact statement, the EIS. What issues doesn't it have to consider? And that's where they're asking advice from all of you. And it'll be clear after their presentations what that's all about. Now, your comments tonight are going to be part of a formal record. We have Bruce Carlson right here. He's our court reporter. He's taking a transcript of the meeting tonight, of all your comments, of the NRC presentations, and that will be publicly available to all of you within 2 to 3 weeks, I think. Now, I have a list of names of people who want to comment tonight, and we got those basically from the blue cards that people filled in when they came into the meeting. And I'm going to call your name, and I'll ask you to join me up here at the podium, and then we'll listen to your comment. And I'll try to call 4 names at a time so that you're prepared to know when you're going to come up next to comment. But because we have so many speakers tonight, and that's really totally gratifying that we have so many people coming out to talk to us, but because we have so many, I'm setting a 4-minute time limit for each comment. Fortunately, you can amplify on your comments. You can amplify on anything you heard here tonight in a written comment to the NRC, and we'll be telling you how you do that. And one of the useful things about these meetings is not only for the NRC to hear your comment, but you may hear other people in the audience say something that'll make you think about, you know what, I want to comment on that also. So even though it's 4 minutes, you're going to hear a lot of useful comments. Now, the NRC staff is here tonight to listen carefully to what you have to say. They're not going to be responding to any of your comments, not going to be responding to any questions that you have in your comments, but they will evaluate your comments and your questions when they prepare the draft environmental impact statement. We do have some representatives of your, the staff of your elected congressional representatives. We have Jim Dumont. Jim? There's Jim Dumont, who's with Senator Heinrich, and Brian Lee, who's with Congressman Lujan. Brian? There's Brian right back there, and thank the representative and the senator for having you come here tonight. There are also representatives of the license applicant here tonight, Holtec International. They'll be here after the meeting to talk with you if you have any questions for them. And just let me introduce Joy Russell from Holtec right back there. Let me introduce the NRC staff. First, we're going to hear from Cynthia Roman. Cynthia? And Cynthia is the chief of the Environmental Review Branch in the NRC's Office of Nuclear Materials, Safety, and Safeguards. And she's going to open the meeting for us. Then we're going to hear from Jill Caverly. Jill is the project manager for the environmental review of the Holtec license application. And you're going to hear a lot of information from her. We also have Ryan Smith here. He shouldn't look relaxed because his plane was delayed and then he had a flat tire coming here. But he looks relaxed, okay. But Ryan he's our senior NRC official. He's the deputy director of the division where Cynthia's branch and Jill's branch is, and it's Division of Fuel Cycle, Safeguards, and Environmental Review. So those are our three speakers, but let me introduce quickly a few others who are here. We have Jose Cuadrado, who's right here. Now Jose's the project manager for the safety review of the Holtec license application. And we have Jose's branch chief, John McKiergan, here, and that's the branch, he's chief of the spent fuel licensing branch. And we also have Dave McIntyre back there. He's from our Office of Public Affairs in Rockville, Maryland. And we have Angel Moreno. Angel is right back there. He's from our Office of Congressional Affairs. And a final point is just let's extend courtesy to everybody. You may hear comments that don't agree with your own, but let's respect the person giving them. And I have to say, I have to emphasize, we've done 3 meetings on this subject in New Mexico. And we've had lots of people there. And at every one of those meetings, people were very courteous. So I know we're going to continue that. But we did have a little kerfluffle at the end of the Carlsberg meeting about timekeeping. So tonight we have official timekeepers rather than unofficial timekeepers like myself. We have an official timekeeper, Miriam Juckett, right here. Okay, we're setting a 4-minute limit, as I said, for comment. And Miriam is going to hold up a sign when you have 1 minute left, okay? And then when your 4 minutes are up, she's going to hold up that red sign. Now, since we're doing the timekeeping, we're going to have to be a little bit more disciplined. When that time is up, I'm going to have to ask you to stop. We're going to call the next person up. So plan accordingly for your comments so that you can get it all in 4 minutes. If you don't get it all in 4 minutes, then send in a written comment. And with that, one other last important thing is that there's a little sign here that says restroom. Well, it's because they're back there, if you need to know. Okay, with that, Cynthia.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
No.
First I want to say a couple of things in Spanish. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Cintia Román. Solo quiero dejarles saber que la presentación de esta noche será en inglés. Pero en la mesa de inscripción van a poder encontrar información sobre el proyecto en español. También podrán encontrar una copia de esta presentación en español. Y lo más importante de esta reunión es escuchar sus comentarios. Así que si ustedes prefieren someter sus comentarios en español, yo estaré aquí para traducirlo. Mi compañero José Cuadrado también puede traducir. Solamente nos tienen que dejar saberlo. Muchas gracias por estar aquí esta noche. Y ahora comienza la presentación. Good evening. As you mentioned, staff in my branch will be working on the environmental review for the Holtec license application, and our main goal today is to hear from you. So I'm going to be very brief. First, I want to give you a very quick overview of what NRC does and our role in regulating the Holtec project. Our agency is charged by federal law to be the nation's only regulator of commercial nuclear materials, independently ensuring these materials are used, handled, and stored safely and securely. Our mission is to protect public health and safety, promote the common defense and security, and protect the environment by regulating the civilian use of radioactive materials. To accomplish our mission, we carefully review each license application we receive before making a decision on whether or not to grant the applicant's request. Next slide. The NRC regulates the operation of 99 nuclear power reactors that generate about 20% of the electricity in the United States. We also regulate civilian use of nuclear materials, research reactors at university, transportation of nuclear materials, and storage and or disposal. NRC strives to be open and transparent and its review. As such, stakeholders will have many opportunities to participate in public meetings on environmental and safety issues. This scoping meeting is one of those opportunities. Next slide. So what is the NRC role regarding the Holtec proposed facility? As an independent regulator, the NRC determines whether it is safe to build and operate a storage facility at the proposed site. The NRC does not promote or build any nuclear facility. We do not own or operate the nuclear facilities. Our mission and our regulations are designed to protect both the public, workers, and environment, as I mentioned earlier. Holtec is applying for a license to store waste. Holtec is not asking NRC for permission to reprocess or generate more nuclear waste. NRC does not select the location for the storage facility. We just evaluate the impacts of building and operating the facility at the location proposed by the licensee. As we will explain later in these presentations, the results of our environmental review will be documented in an environmental impact statement, which is a public document. This analysis, among other factors, will form the basis for the staff decision on whether to issue a license or not. This concludes my remarks, and now Jill Caverly will provide additional information about the environmental review process. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jill Caverly, and I'm going to be acting as the environmental project manager for this project. The next few slides are going to be specific to the Holtec review. Holtec has applied for a license to construct and operate a storage facility under 10 CFR Part 72, the NRC's regulations governing the storage of spent nuclear fuel and reactor-related greater than Class C waste. So if granted, Holtec would receive a 40-year license to construct and operate the consolidated interim storage facility. The current application before the NRC requests construction and operation of only the first phase of up to 20 planned phases. In the current application, Holtec is requesting storage of up to 500 canisters of spent nuclear fuel. The spent fuel would come from shut down and operating nuclear power plants from around the country. Holtec anticipates applying for up to 20 phases of construction and operation of 500 canisters of spent nuclear fuel each, for a total of 10,000 canisters of spent fuel storage. These additional phases would require separate license applications from Holtec and would be subject to their own safety and environmental reviews. The environmental report The environmental report provides information on the full build-out of the site, or 10,000 canisters. Next slide. So this slide shows the approximate location of the proposed consolidated interim storage facility in southeastern New Mexico. And as you can see, the proposed facility would be located approximately halfway between the cities of Carlsbad and Hobbs in Lee County. Next slide. Holtec plans to use a high-storm UMAX system for the storage of the spent fuel. High-storm UMAX stands for the Holtec International Storage Module Underground Maximum Capacity, and is an NRC certified design, which means that we have evaluated it and determined that it meets NRC regulations and can safely store spent fuel. This system is a dry, in-ground spent fuel storage system. Each of the modules holds 1 canister of spent fuel, and Holtec has applied for storage of 500 canisters of spent fuel. The canisters transfer facilities would be below ground. This is a low-profile design, and this is a conceptual drawing from the application. Next slide. So this is a flow chart that provides an overview of the license application review process, which is generally described as a 3 parallel phase review process. After the application is submitted, the NRC conducts an acceptance review to determine if the application has sufficient enough information to begin a detailed review. If so, the NRC documents the application, and that begins the safety and environmental review path. So from a safety standpoint, we work through a separate review to decide if a license should be issued. The results of the safety review phase is a safety evaluation report. This is graphically represented on the left column of the flow chart, or the steps in orange. The environmental review results in an environmental impact statement, which describes the impact on the environment of the proposed project. On the right-hand side, you'll see the adjudicatory hearings. That blue box on the figure refers to the opportunity for the public to request a hearing on the application. These hearings would be held if a petition to intervene was granted. So the results of these 3 processes, a hearing if granted, the results of an environmental review documented in an environmental impact statement, and the safety review documented in the safety evaluation report, will factor into NRC's final decision on whether or not to grant the license to Holtec for the storage facility. It's important to note that tonight's focus will be on the environmental review process. So this diagram outlines the environmental review in more detail, or the middle column of the previous slide. The opportunities for public involvement are highlighted in light blue. The NRC starts the environmental review by publishing a notice of intent to inform the public of our plan to prepare an EIS and conduct the scoping process. The light blue box on the right side identifies the current scoping process, of which this meeting is included. The purpose of this phase is to gather more information to use to help prepare the EIS. Comments gathered from this meeting, as well as many other information collections, will be independently evaluated for impacts of this particular project on the environment. We will document your comments today in this meeting transcript. The public can also provide written comments through the end of the scoping period. It's important to know that we analyze all the information gathered, will develop an EIS, and issue it for public comment. At that time, we will again invite the public's comment on the draft environmental impact statement, and that's the lower blue box on the left side. At that time, we will schedule a meeting to hear your comments on the draft EIS. NRC will evaluate those comments and consider modifying the draft EIS before issuing a final EIS. The final EIS and the results of the safety review, the safety evaluation report, will contribute to NRC's final decision on the application. Next slide, please. So our environmental review is based on the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA requires federal agencies to apply a systematic approach to evaluate the impacts of its actions on the environment. NRC will prepare the EIS in accordance with those regulations. Next slide. This is a graphical representation of the types and sources of information that NRC gathers when preparing the EIS. We will conduct a site visit and meet with local and state officials and other federal agencies and tribes. We are currently gathering information for scoping to help us determine which issues should be considered in our review. We also expect to request additional information from Holtec following the completion of these activities. Next slide. The NRC will gather information on a wide range of topics and related to the environmental issues. This slide shows many of the resource areas that we will consider in our environmental impact statement. We typically include all of these in our impact statement. Okay, next slide. Thanks. This slide is a high-level timeline of our anticipated environmental review. This stepwise approach meets our responsibilities under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. We started the review with the Notice of Intent to conduct scoping and prepare the EIS, and that started a 60-day scoping period. The NRC has since received several requests to expand the scoping period, and did so. The revised scoping period will end on July 30th. We will continue to gather and analyze information related to the review and develop and publish the draft EIS. At that point, we'll publish a notice of availability that starts at least a 45-day period for the public and other agencies to comment on the draft EIS. Those comments, like I said earlier, will be addressed and analysis adjusted if necessary. Next slide. So the scoping process helps the NRC to determine the scope of the EIS and identify significant issues to be analyzed in depth. It also identifies and eliminates issues which are not significant. Finally, it identifies other environmental reviews and consultation requirements related to the proposed action. Next slide. The NRC is requesting information and input specific to the proposed facility regarding what should be included or excluded from the scope of the EIS. Some examples of the information the NRC is requesting are the local projects that are being planned. Are there local projects that are being planned or developed nearby? Have you identified any wildlife or habitat that should be considered? Are there cultural resources that should be considered in the evaluation? Are there particular populations nearby that should be considered? Are there unique characteristics of the project site or local communities that NRC should consider in its evaluation? Next slide. There are several ways you can submit comments on the scope of the EIS. You may present your comments orally or in writing at this public meeting. You may submit comments through the regulations.gov website by searching for the docket ID listed here, and I'll say it for the record, NRC-2018-0052. You also may mail comments to the address on the slide. You may also email your comments to the address listed on this slide. So we've extended the scoping period until July 30th. So please, if you choose to provide comments in one of these 4 ways, please do so by July 30th. Next slide. So for additional information on this application and review, you can access many different publications, including the Federal Rulemaking website, NRC's Public Document Room, and through the NRC's project-specific website for the Holtec application, and that's listed on the slide here. We've also asked that the public libraries in Hobbs, Carlsbad, and Roswell to hold a copy of the environmental report for your review. If you want to be on our mailing list, please make sure that your name and your email was provided to one of the NRC staff in the back of the room. This is one way to ensure that you'll be notified of upcoming meetings, and the issuance of a draft and final EIS. So at the bottom of this slide are the NRC points of contact. Here's Jose and myself. Feel free to contact us if you have any further questions. Please remember to provide all those comments by July 30th. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian for some closing remarks.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for attending our public scoping meeting tonight. We look forward to receiving your comments. My name is Brian Smith. I'm the Deputy Director of the Division of Fuel Cycle, Safety, Safeguards, and Environmental Review at the NRC's headquarters in Rockville, Maryland. My division has the responsibility for leading this environmental impact statement review. It's a responsibility that we take very seriously. I know there's those of you who are in the audience who may be supportive of the project, and those of you that may be against the project tonight. We want to hear from both sides. But most importantly, we want to hear from you what you think is most important for us to review as part of our environmental impact statement review. We treat all the comments the same, whether submitted by one person or many. And as we complete our environmental impact statement, we will consider every comment that we receive. During the last few public scoping meetings, there was a consent-based license or a consent-based process that was brought up by several commenters. I want to provide a little bit of clarification on that. This was a DOE initiative that they started a while back and then subsequently ended. The NRC does not follow a consent-based licensing process. The way the NRC process works is we establish the regulations that applicants have to meet. The applicants then choose a site and then prepare a license application that is submitted to the NRC for review. We do our review, safety, security, environmental review, and if the applicant satisfies all of our regulations, we then issue a license. So, once again, we look forward to hearing your comments tonight, and with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for that clear explanation of the process. Was that clear to everybody how the NRC process works? Okay, well, we're going to go to public comment now, and I'll ask you to come up here. We have the state of New Mexico representative with us tonight, Stephanie Garcia Richardson, and I'm going to ask Representative Richardson to come up. Then we're going to go to Mr. Norman Patrick Brown, Marvin Tilden, and then Jonathan Perry. So this is Representative Richardson.
Yata A. Good evening, everyone. No A. My name is Stephanie Garcia Richard. I represent Los Alamos. So I'm very familiar with the NRC, with the process that we are considering here this evening. I am very gratified to see so many people in attendance because truly this is a matter of national importance that we are here to speak about this evening, and so I'm happy to see so many New Mexicans, so many local people here to give their comments on this process. It's my job in the state legislature to represent my people and their concerns about safety. And so that's the capacity that I'm here this evening. I'm here to represent the people that I represent in New Mexico and some of the concerns and health and safety, environmental concerns that they have shared with me, with you all here this evening. And I would really urge the NRC to take into account the folks that are going to speak to you tonight, because they have history of a long legacy of nuclear matters. They live with legacy uranium here in this community, as we do in Los Alamos. We live with legacy storage of defense waste, and so I really hope that you take into account their comments. I learned on Friday we had a legislative hearing about this same matter, and I learned that there was a site that was approved in Utah over the objections of the public there. And so I really hope that that does not become the case here, because I know that a lot of these scoping meetings have had much opposition, and so I hope that we are not going to approve a license over the objection of New Mexicans. The site in Utah has actually not even been used because there's so much opposition that they are actually not even granting access to it or approving the lease to access it. So some of the concerns I have been sent here to share with you this evening, these come from about 7 of my Senate colleagues and about 21 of my House colleagues, and they include analysis of the transportation routes that would be utilized, the state permits that have been requested, and what permits would be required for this facility, the potential liability to the state and financial assurances to New Mexico, emergency preparedness and need for equipment and training, water contamination risks, seismic concerns, the stability and suitability of the site, contamination risks due to the oil, gas, dairy, ranching, and other industry within the area that we are speaking of, longevity and viability of the transportation and storage casks and canisters, and how damaged or cracked waste containers would be handled at the facility if there is indeed going to be no hot cell or that kind of facility to care for these casks should they rupture. So that is my comment this evening. I very much appreciate being included, and I look forward to listening to the rest of the local community and hearing their comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Richardson. Mr. Brown? And then we'll go to Marvin Tilden and then Jonathan Perry. This is Mr. Brown. Norman Patrick Brown.
I'd like to say good evening. My name is Norman Patrick Brown. I'm a co-founder of one of the largest grassroots organizations, the Nebuchadnezzar Coalition, which means the People's Strength. I've been very honored over my lifetime to speak on behalf of my grassroots community. I was asked by Grandma to come here to speak my truths and speak her truths. As you know, we have suffered the horrible uranium legacy. We call these crimes against humanity. Earlier, I saw your logo saying that you protect the environment and the people. We believe that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, through factual history, their collusion with energy corporations have come onto our land. You are 70 years late in reaffirming your trust responsibility to, you have failed in your trust responsibility to my people. Because of your failure, we have lost thousands of our men. I'm speaking on behalf of my mothers, my aunties, my sisters, my daughters and nieces who've lost their fathers, their grandfathers, their uncles and their brothers to uranium mining. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission knew the effects of uranium, and they still allowed our Navajo men into those mines. So I'm here to remind you, we are at the front end of the nuclear fuel cycle. How are you going to fix the DNA, the radioactive DNA in our DNA? How are you going to fix the air, the water, and the land? There is a historical legacy here that you must examine. You all are going to leave here. We are stuck here. I want you to listen to my people when they come here and they tell you what is happening to them and what has happened to them and what is going to happen to us in the future. There is no safe way to store uranium. There is no safe way. It's hard to believe under this administration, the Trump administration, with all the environmental rollbacks and the hard-earned fight and struggle for these laws that we have now that protect the land environment. I just want to remind you that you have failed. If the Navajo Nation or other indigenous nations ask you not to transport this garbage across our lands, will you adhere to them? We made a treaty. In that treaty, you promised us certain things. And you guys have failed. I've been to dozens of scoping meetings over my lifetime, the U.S. Forest Service, sacred sites issues, uranium issues, the RECA issues. And each time the NRC has failed to install and has failed to initiate our concerns into law. You and the uranium companies, to my people, to my elders, are one and the same.
And Mr. Brown.
So I just want to say thank you. I hope you understand this anger that we have. We are the poorest of the poor, but we are the rich guardians of this land. So I want you to acknowledge that. When you leave here, you're leaving, we're still here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Tilden from Arkansas is up next, and then we'll go to Jonathan Perry.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone here involved that made this meeting possible. I want to point out one thing in advance. The incorrect name that has been used for me, my name is Mervyn Tilden, not Marvin. This is a fact in everything that the NRC or any uranium mining extraction company that comes onto our land has been guilty of, and has provided misinformation from the outset. Again, my name is Mervyn Tilden. I am a resident of Church Rock. I'm also living here temporarily in Gallup. I want to address several things that talk about the safety or transportation of nuclear waste to the nuclear storage. The first one is that there's no safe transport.
Mervyn, could you just back a little bit off from the mic so that they can hear you?
Okay, sorry. There's no safe transport or storage of nuclear waste. I represent Eastern Navajo Diné Against Uranium Mining, which is comprised of 23 Navajo chapters on the Eastern Navajo Agency, which is in the part of the Four Corners area, otherwise known as the National Sacrifice Zone. I would like to know what kind of meetings are going to be held in the Arizona chapters along the I-40 route, the Navajo chapters. Are there going to be public meetings? And this is a concern of the safety in regards to the storage factor. There was an incident in February 2014 where a single drum burst at the Waste Isolation Pipe Pilot Project plant, and the chief suspect was cat litter, which is used to absorb liquid nuclear waste. The canister it exploded. So what kind of safety factors are going to be used for the transport? Everything that I've been reading, nuclear transportation has gone through 43 states in the United States. The Department of Transportation regulates this. How is these regulations being given to the Navajo people along the way, beginning from, and also the Laguna Aqua Pueblo people? What is their involvement? But along the way, there are chapters that are also going to be affected. And this goes back to the fact that in July 16, 1979, there was the nation's largest nuclear accident which spilled radioactive waste into the Rio Puerco that went down the Rio Puerco past the Navajo chapters along the way, and nothing was ever done for cleanup. Nothing was ever done for cleanup in the Church Rock and Crown Point areas. We have not heard anything from the NRC or the state of New Mexico or any other agencies regarding cleanup or reclamation of the mines that are already there. So what's going to happen if there's an accident along the way? I got 1 minute left, so I want to point out the fact that there needs to be intergovernment relations with the Navajo Nation, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and any other tribe. This includes public record inspections, protections against the radioactive waste spills, and the fact that the nuclear industry is on the decline. Also, the notice for this meeting here was in the Gallup Sun dated May 18th, and also the deadline in that notice was to pre-register was May 18th. So you're not giving it enough time, Nuclear Regulatory Commission or anybody else involved in promoting this daily transport of nuclear waste. The half-life of nuclear, uranium-238 isotope is 4.5 billion years. In human terms, this is forever. We got to be careful, not only from the extraction of uranium, but for the transport to the storage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you very much. And Jonathan, here comes Jonathan Perry's coming up, and then we're going to go to Kimberly Wapapa, B. Sargent, Lily Lee, and Rose Marie Sacchini.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. I'd like to make a few comments. First off, I'm very disappointed in the presentation coming into our area here. It would be much more courteous to have translation, verbal translation for my people here who don't really understand the full technical terms. Number two, the presentation of our people and how we conduct our business, we would like to be respected. 4 minutes is not long enough for us to present and also to identify ourselves as people, as Tanet. Right. Now, I'm a council delegate for Eastern Navajo Agency. I represent 8 chapters. And I am strictly, and I have always been against anything regarding nuclear development. The reason being is that we have a long history here, as stated by some of my people earlier, that we have many generations are going to be impacted. Today, I was very disappointed to hear that our own Navajo Nation government, Navajo EPA, was told not to have these discussions with the council delegates. Why is the federal government, why is NRC dictating to the Navajo Nation how we can have these discussions? That is a very major disappointment. So I'm asking my congressional representatives and those with the state and the federal level, please allow the Navajo Nation government to have these discussions internally as well as with our communities. It's very important. Now, in terms of providing comments on this particular project, we don't even know what the project is specifically. There has been no detailed information on this given to my community members. Sure, we got the process at NRC, but how can we make adequate comments if we don't even know what the full extent of the project is going to be? That needs to be shared. Now, I ask for respect with Navajo Nation because of our laws, of course, that we have a radioactive and related substance equipment, vehicles and persons and materials transportation act of 2012. Different routes that will be used, different transportation forms will be used to transport these things to the location. And that's going to be a big question that stated the emergency response. But also, can our infrastructure of the state, can we handle these type of transportation? No, we are very, very inadequately set up in terms of our railway, in terms of highways. It's going to be a very dangerous thing to undertake. And I ask for you to understand that. The other one is that the United States is part of the Organization of American States, which adopted the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples on June 15, 2016. And there's two articles I want to point out. The first article is the right to protection of a healthy environment. Indigenous peoples are entitled to be protected against the introduction of an abandonment, expiration, transit, and discriminate use or disposition of any harmful substance that could be negatively affect the indigenous communities, lands, territories, and resources. The second one is Article 12, Indigenous Law and Jurisdiction. The indigenous law and legal system shall be recognized and respected by the national and regional and international legal systems. Again, this is where I ask that we as a Navajo Nation be allowed to have our indigenous laws and jurisdictions respected, not only written laws, but our traditional law, the net fundamental law that exists, that connects us to our land, to air, and to our people. No matter where it's at on the face of the earth, it's still our mother. We have to respect it, we have to protect her. So I'm used to time limits, so I'm going to say thank you for hearing my comments, but in respect to my colleagues on the council, especially in Eastern, we do oppose any type of nuclear development. Thank you.
Okay, Kimberly, and then we'll go to B Sergeant, Lily Lee, and Rosemary Sajidi.
Dr. Chair, Kimberly Wapipan Chair, Tachini Shlin, Okanere, Bashichin, Bashin, and Fiona Shlin. Welcome. First of all, I've been born and raised here. I was born west of Gallup, Manuelito. That's a tribal land. First of all, I would ask that the NRC take accountability for the oil and gas because Standing Rock has happened. Who is going to protect our Indian people? Who is going to stand up for us? Because there's no law. There's police officers across the street, and there's no one to protect us here. A lot of our elders have mental problems because of the uranium. There's no one to help them, no doctors or nurses. But yet you guys still come over here wanting to do this in a good way, but really it's not solving nothing. As being indigenous, it's very hard. We live in poverty. Some of us have no transportation in rural areas, but yet we have no say in our own land. And it's up to us to preserve the land as who we are. We are not something as costumes, nor we're not a joke, nor we're mocked and we should be discriminated against. We are not puppets, we're not guinea pigs. We're human beings. We have rights too. And since this uranium thing has happened, this has been going on since 1970 and nothing has been resolved. And we sit here on our sacred lands trying to plead for help throughout the corporations that are coming just to make money off our lands. I don't appreciate it because most of them are dying. At the same time, there's no medicine to help those that are affected by uranium. Our earth is dying every day because of pollution, of gas. At the same time, we have corporations coming here making money off of our land. And on sacred sites, we have bear ears also to protect also. And at the same time, it should not be messed with. It should not be touched. Our land should not be touched because many historical trauma has been through us as we walk through this historic here on 66, the long walk. Also, our missing and murdered have been affected by these oil camps, by the man camps. They've been raped, sex trafficking also with the oil companies, and much more needs to be done. So I ask all the legislature and our leaders of New Mexico to help our people right now. And at the same time, I ask for solidarity for our community right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, Steve, I'm sorry.
So here we are again, listening to the eloquence of ourselves. You know those sausages that they showed in the beginning? How we're all going to follow these sausages. This person's going to ask this person, and it's all going to be fair in the end. It's absolute bullshit, and we all know it. These companies, which never should have been started in the first place, can't take care of their own shit, and they're bringing it here. It only encourages other companies to start and be polluters. The whole thing is so fucking bad. I want to scream.
And Billy Lane. This is Lily Lane.
Ayate tahasito shikedo shidene sheya kodosh echi Lily Lane in the shke kaban shingo this kind of machine ado timpitwani da shedo kia ani da shnale ado tsaga hotzan de cash. That's my introduction in Navajo. Navajo people, we have clans, and that's why we're all connected. And a lot of us Native people in this audience, we consider each other relatives. And so we are the first people on this continent. And we have traditions, beliefs, songs, prayers that connect us to places within where we live. And here in the Southwest, the Southwest is native land to maybe 30 tribes or so. And we're the ones that have, like my brothers and sisters talked before me, we're the ones that paid for liberty in the United States. And so Navajo people, uranium was mined on our lands. Those uranium was used to build bombs for the wars. And then Navajo people, they used our language in the South Pacific. They used the Navajo language to win the war against the Japanese. And then to win the war against the Japanese. And then, but our people died. Our people died in the communities where there are concentrations of uranium mines. And this is Monument Valley. These are beautiful places. The Cove, Arizona, Church Rock, New Mexico, and Cameron, Arizona. These are where all the uranium mines are. And they did not get cleaned up. All the companies fled. They made their money. They fled our beautiful people, our lands. And then now we're dealing with the sickness, and we're also dealing with areas that are not safe for our people. And so in my 8-to-5 job for the Navajo Nation, I work with uranium mines. I work with communities to try to clean up these mines. And in this, President Russell Gay's administration, they assigned me to be on the tribal caucus for radioactive transport and radioactive materials transport. And so on behalf of the Navajo Nation and on behalf of those tribes who do not have a representative, I am a member to the tribal caucus for these issues that are being discussed tonight. And so, and that covers my job, what I've learned, covers the whole lifetime of uranium, from extraction to processing to now the spent nuclear fuel. And so it's a new subject for me, but I'm passionate about the work that I have done earlier, and that's to advocate for the cleanup of over 500 uranium mines on the Navajo Nation. And this is throughout the entire the nation. And so thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Billy. And this is Rosemary Zacchini.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rosemary Cicchini. I'm a married sister, and I'm coordinating the Office of Life, Peace, Justice, Creation Stewardship under the auspices of Catholic Charities of Gallup Diocese. As concerned people of faith in communities in New Mexico, we want our voices heard regarding this Holtec environmental report to bring 100,000 metric tons of spent fuel, high-level radioactive waste from nuclear power plants from around our country to southeast New Mexico. In light of our covenant relationship with our Creator, to be responsible stewards of God's gift, intended for the life and well-being of the entire community of life, we strongly oppose plans to make New Mexico a national radioactive waste dumping ground, or to transporting up to 10,000 canisters of highly radioactive waste, irresponsibly putting at risk the lives, health, and environment of thousands of communities throughout our country. There are moral, ethical, and environmental justice principles that must be included in all decision-making that threatens human lives, communities, wildlife, the environment that sustains us all. We should not have to risk the death-dealing contamination of our land, aquifers, air, the health of vegetation, wildlife, livestock, endangering present and future generations in our country. This Holtec proposal is contrary to current law. Current law only allows the U.S. Department of Energy to take title to commercial spent fuel, quote, following commencement of operation of a repository, unquote, or at a DOE-owned and operated, monitored, retrievable storage facility. The Holtec site meets neither requirement, as it is a private facility. The Holtec plan is an ill-fated experiment, a temporary stopgap measure that contributes nothing toward a long-term strategy for storing our nation's spent nuclear fuel and high-level radioactive waste in a way that will protect public safety and national security, that will preserve our natural resources and environment. A stopgap, temporary plan is not a solution to the real challenge. It does not provide the required long-term solution of verifiably safe, permanent storage of lethal radioactive waste from the over 99 nuclear power plants in the U.S. Nuclear waste should be stored in hardened, secure facilities at or near nuclear sites, radioactive radiation sites, until a permanent, scientifically proven, publicly acceptable, and ethically chosen waste solution is implemented. Ending the generation of nuclear waste is also essential in addressing the challenge. The environment report is inadequate and incomplete because it does not analyze the impact of the spent fuel being left at the Holtec site indefinitely. Holtec is requesting from NRC a 40-year license to store the waste in Lee County with the opportunity to extend the license for 120 years. But Holtec stated in its license application that the waste could be stored there for 300 years. More alternatives need to be analyzed. Keeping the spent fuel cask in some form of hardened on-site storage on the reactor sites must be analyzed. The alternative of consolidated storage being done at an existing licensed independent spent fuel storage facility also must be analyzed. And we must look at the 34 closed, shut down nuclear power plants with sizable territory and highly guarded as sites for possible permanent storage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Go to Roger Lewis next. Here's Roger, and then we're going to go to Ure and Casey, Dennis Romero, and then Ed Mayer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Roger Lewis. I live up here near the impacted area where all your mines were, northeast Church Rock area. And let me go back. When I was in the military, I served in a unit with a Persian missile that had a nuclear armament. And then, you know, it had a war, you had to have nuclear, maybe like 25 yield, megaton on it. You could actually, you know, touch it. And I think it was maybe radiation, we didn't know about it. And then when I came back, I got hired by United Nuclear Corporation. And I worked for them for about maybe 14 years. And I know how to extract uranium all the way from grinding all the way to packaging and drying. I knew every step of the way, all the way across. I knew how to do it. We knew how to do it. And a lot of our people, I guess, were affected by it today. And as we speak right now, there's nothing good about it. Nothing. I lost a brother, I lost a sister through all this scourge. Nothing will cure it. And right now, it has hurt Mother Earth down below us. We don't see it. It's just how this inland is, this white area. There's nothing there. We'll never see it. That's what it is. It's so much, it'll do so much damage, maybe we'll never see it. That's the way it is. That's the way I see it. And the mines right now, the tailings, everything, that's still piled up right there. The wind was blowing today. I was out there watering my livestock. And it's still sitting there. What's it doing there? You know, the people that left it there, they never came back to pick it up. That's the way it is. People just come here, they do these studies. Nothing's coming back. You know, at least they should say, you know, can we help you here? Can we help you do this? No, they don't do that. We're trying to fight that Radiation Exposure Compensation Act today. Nothing, you know, they're still fiddling around with it. New Mexico legislature and all this, you know, the federal government, they don't want to pay us back of all the ill effects from it. You know, I was a miller, so, and a lot of miners we're still trying to plead with it day in and day out. Nothing's ever done to us to help us back. Nothing. So I'm just saying, so no matter how you look at it, it'll never come up to anything good. That's the way I see it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Ure and Casey, do you want to come up? This is Ure and Casey.
we're hurting Mother Earth a lot by the radioactive waste. We don't see it because it's radioactive. It can hurt your DNA. It can do a lot of things beyond what we know. And people just leave it there, they don't move it, it just stays in one place. And when the people move it, it starts to spread to towns, cities, and it starts to ruin how we live.
The only reason I came is because of my son. If you have children, you understand. If you have a future, you understand. Thank you.
There's Dennis, and then we're going to go to Ed Mayer, and then Thompson Bell and Teresa Lowry.
Good evening. So thank you for coming here. Thank you for allowing the public to speak. I'm going to give you a little background about myself, and then I'm going to go straight to the point here. So I have a BS in Civil and Environmental Engineering. I'm a licensed engineer, master's degrees in Geology and Chemistry from New Mexico Tech, and a certificate in Waste Management from your DOE and work program out of New Mexico Tech. I worked for Los Alamos National Lab for 10 years, and I was an NMED employee for 10 years. And you are not going to find a more supportive person than nuclear technology and the promise it holds. And that being said, I'm going to tell you, I would strongly recommend that the applicant withdraw its application. The Nuke Navy. Here's the beautiful thing about the Nuke Navy. Close to 60 years with 0 accidents. They do it right. You work for the NRC, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for you and your profession and your agency. But privatizing waste storage does not seem to be a wise choice. You have had, for example, I look at WIP. I worked on the WIP project. I worked on the Yucca Mountain project. I analyzed TruePack 1 and 2 containers. Here's the bottom line. Those were beautifully designed facilities. Beautifully designed. And you know what? You still had an accident. Okay? I'm not here to put down this my former employer. I love the people that work up there. They're good people. Okay? Everybody in the world has some element of goodness and kindness to them. But you still had an accident. One error, ladies and gentlemen. So I urge, as part of your scoping, please examine all risks associated with the packaging at the sites, with the transport, the risks associated with the transport of the material coming into New Mexico, as well as the offloading and the storage. I know NRC is huge on risk assessment. You do a beautiful job in every document I've ever seen. I ask you not just to look at the small footprint of the facility, but to look at the entire operation from the time it goes from a nuke plant to the time it arrives in New Mexico. Okay, so that's the first thing I'll ask you to do, is to properly assess risks. I will also ask that you require the applicant to do something very similar to what DOE did with WIP. They had to pay for a neutral third-party analysis. I understand the NRC has some great technical people. What DOE did is they paid for the Environmental Engineering Research Institute, PhD-level folks, to adequately assess the technical feasibility of WIP, the compact containers, contact and remote handled waste. I ask that you require the applicant to do that. I ask that you require the applicant to provide a full-fledged economic analysis. They are touting the fact, and I have no reason to doubt them, they're probably great people at a good company, but they're saying, we're going to bring 135 jobs into New Mexico. I'm here to tell you, unless you raise Sandia and Los Alamos National Labs or WIP, you are not going to get those people. So you're going to have to train them up, or you're going to have to bring them in from out of state. I'm also going to ask to look at certain political issues. You know, the top priority should be public health, welfare, and safety. And I go to a friend of mine, Steve Zappi, who was the WIP manager, the program manager for New Mexico Environment Department. He did a beautiful job. He knew his stuff, technically competent, and he didn't back down from anybody. Unfortunately, and I don't say this to make this political, but it is political. The Martinez administration came in. They wanted Landell to move more waste to WIP. They made Steve Zappi a food inspector. He went to restaurants. Within 2 years of removing Steve Zappi from that position, WIP had an accident. From a package store, drummed Atlanta, packaged Atlanta, that I guarantee you Steve Zappi would not have let been packaged. So what I'm saying is, I'm a proponent of nuke power. I'm a proponent of nuke technology, and I'm asking you to seriously consider this application and possibly denying it. And I thank you all very much for your time.
We can go to Ed Mayer now, and then Thompson Bell and Teresa Lowry. This is Ed Mayer.
Hey, good evening. My name's Ed Mayer, and I'm a program director at Holtec International. And specifically, I'm the program director for this project. And I appreciate the compliments to the Nuclear Navy. Before I joined Holtec, I served in the Nuclear Navy for 27 years. I served on submarines, and I commanded two. And now I have a deep understanding of Holtec's technology and very high standards. It's the safest and most secure technology on the planet. Thanks, Jim. So, I'll just start over. My name's Ed Mayer. I'm a program director at Holtec International. And I appreciate the compliments to the Nuclear Navy. Before I came to Holtec, I served in the Navy for 27 years in submarines, and I commanded two of them. And I have a deep understanding of Holtec's technology, the high storm UMAX. And it's the safest and most secure technology on Earth. So I'll start today by saying it's a pleasure to be here. And first, I'd like to provide Holtec's commitment to the NRC to provide quality responses in a timely manner to ensure, first, the accuracy of our submission, but also to meet the schedules for the NRC's review. And I'd also like to provide some facts about High Store. It's a consolidated interim storage facility, and ask for your support. The ELEA Energy Alliance, also known as ELEA, is our partner. ELEA was formed in 2006 with the express mission of providing economic benefit to New Mexico. All of its members are longtime proud residents of New Mexico, and the power of teaming with them, it's a public-private venture, is that they understand the community and they understand the local area. And that's what they bring to the table for us as Holtec International, that deep understanding. Holtec International is a strong technology company, and our core business for the past 32 years is the safe and secure storage of nuclear fuel. All the equipment supplied by Holtec is designed, engineered, fabricated, and in most cases operated by Holtec employees. And we're an American company. We fabricate everything in the United States. We have 3 production facilities, one in Orville, Ohio, one in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and where we're located, we, as myself, Stefan, and Joy, are located in Camden. That's the 3rd production facility. And we have an impeccable safety record. None of our equipment has ever experienced a safety issue, has leaked, or caused injury. And get back to ELEA. The members of ELEA asked Holtec to be their partner in 2013 after careful evaluation of the safety and security of our used fuel storage and transportation equipment. And that transportation is the High Star 190, and the storage is the High Storm UMAX. Holtec, with outstanding support from ELEA, will obtain the NRC license to construct and operate the consolidated interim storage facility, and the name's High Storm, so that's what we call it. Once appropriate contractual and funding provisions are in place, Holtec will construct and operate a facility. Local residents and local businesses will be hired to construct and operate the facility. And we're going to bring high-paying jobs to the area, and we categorize.
I have to interrupt.
And we have to categorize.
This is public comment. Why is Holtec allowed to talk during public comment?
Would you please sit
They're
down?
not a member of the public.
Actually, I am a member of the general public, and that's why I'm here. You'll note that I'm not sitting in the front row, and I have a desk in the back. And,
I want to stand in solidarity with her. You are not the public.
Continue on, please.
So we're going to hire local residents and companies, and we're going to provide high-paying jobs to the area, high-paying $60,000 to $70,000 jobs. The people in New Mexico are rich in technical knowledge, especially in nuclear technology, with 2 national laboratories, 3 Air Force bases, an Army base, and Urenco, and also the waste isolation processing plant. The geology, site characteristics, environment, and other factors on the proposed site are ideal for the storage of used nuclear fuel. Our mission is to offer a temporary, safe, and secure storage facility for the nation's nuclear waste.
And temporary is measured in decades. So I heard 300 years, it's not 300 years, it's measured in decades, and it will be permanently stored in a deep repository, either Yucca Mountain or something like Yucca Mountain, but again, in-room storage. We're going to be good stewards to the environment and good neighbors to local communities with our safe technology that will minimize impacts to the environment. And will help diversify the economy by providing well-paying jobs to New Mexico. So I close by saying, if you have any questions, myself, Stefan, who is our Vice President for Engineering, and Joy, our Vice President for External Communications and Market Development, will be in the back to answer any questions you have. So thank you.
All right. Okay. We're going to go to...
We don't want it.
We're going to go to Thompson Bell. Now, Thompson?
We don't want your ways.
And then we're going to go to Teresa Lowry. This is Thompson Bell. And after Teresa, we'll go to Terry Sloan and Larry Keene and Talia Boyd.
As you had said, for 4 minutes I felt like I was back on the long walk trying to get out of time, you know. So I just want to show you my family here that involved in this Redwater Pond, this community. And my daughter is actually part of the design team with what do you call it, the dump site where they're going to move the uranium. Like I said, my name is Thompson Bell. This is my little boys, and my wife Rose, and my boys 12, 11, 10, and a 4-year-old, and my oldest daughter. We know what it means to be impacted right there as you live close to the uranium mines and be ignorant enough to work in it also. As you know that as I was working, I was inside the mine 1,670 feet down. As you are contaminated day by day as you work and you take it home, you don't know what you have given your family. So because of that, right now as you see me, I have four limbs, but yet you don't see the torment that I have with things I have health-wise. It hurts, it itches, and things like that, just, you don't see it. So when you have these effects, you have contamination that penetrates, and penetration that you can't see, and these things that our body takes, that most people, not even the medical groups, don't even know about. They just think it's all lungs. But the thing about it is, like I said, they always just pinpoint the lungs, but it's the whole body. So the thing that I want to stress here is that it is dangerous and deadly when you get contaminated. I don't know how many things that were named here of all the contamination down this arroyo that was flooded. All that hasn't even been touched. Second of all, I would say the structure, you know. We all know about second law of thermodynamics. Things wear out. Things that can't hold together after so many years. When you're born, you're already dying, right? Things that we make, it comes apart. And when, as a mechanic, I see things, you know, hold back by 2,000 PSI by a little O-ring. But when it breaks, what happens? It makes a mess. And things about the structure, when you have to open it, guess what? It has a hinge. Don't they get rotten and rusted also? Things that we make is actually no good. And also, one of the things that EPA did to us as a family, you know, they told us we're going to be involved, but yet here, everything was already determined before we even argued about it. So these things that we say, I don't know if it's going to be told. And so these things that I'm trying to tell you is that I don't know if we're going to be hurt just because of us as Navajo Nation, as people here. And I can imagine every one of you take a can tonight and throw it into your neighbor's backyard and see how he likes it. When you throw that can into our backyard with those cans bigger than our trucks. That's what I think it is, trash in our backyard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bell. And, is Teresa? Teresa's coming up. And then we'll go to Larry King and Talia.
Hello. I just wanted to speak to some personal experience that I've had lately. And that is, in the last 4 weeks, going down I-40, I have been run off the road by semis twice. Completely off the road. So there is no way any vehicle coming through this town can be guaranteed to pass through safely. There are a lot of trucks on our highway, and I am totally against this. We need to keep that stuff wherever it's at and not traveling on the highway, not any highway. Somebody created it, let them deal with it in their own backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay, and then you go ahead, and then Mr. Sloan, you want to talk? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, did I go?
No, don't worry.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Larry King. I live out near the old Church Rock UNC and Kerr-McGee site. Back in '96, there was a grassroots organization that was formed to challenge the NRC license. The NRC granted a license to a mining company from South Texas. And the grassroots organization that I've joined, we challenge more than 12 issues that the mining company had on their EIS. And for close to 20 years, we went through court with NRC, and all of the hearings were always held in DC, away from the community at the affected sites. And each one, NRC sided with the mining company. NRC is always with the mining company, any industry, any polluters. So they won't listen to us. But I plead with you, listen to the community. There's an outstanding objection to this company, Holtec. I can guarantee you there are going to be some accidents. Our roads in New Mexico are the best in the nation. It's bad. There's always barrels, orange barrels. When I go from here to Albuquerque, there's always orange barrels. Roads are being repaired all the time. There wasn't any discussion on the routes that were going to be taken. There's more than 60 years of uranium legacy that's in our area. There's one right behind in my own backyard, and also from where my cousin brother lives. Thomason Bell and the family, Redwater Pond. They're sandwiched in between two abandoned mines. And they've been dealing with EPA, another government agency. And they've been told that the mine legacy was going to be cleaned up 2010, 12, 16. Now it goes all the way up to 2022. What are they waiting for? People to die off? So NRC, are you going to listen to the people, all these objections? It seems like there's it's a no-brainer. Everybody's objecting to this new proposed plan. So we need to. Our area is already dealing with mine legacy for more than 60 years, left by a mining company. Oh, okay. 1 minute. I always go over it. Let me tell you that. But we can't allow another proposed waste to come into our area. We need to address our local legacy first. We need our elected officials to stand with the public and say no to this new company. And also, on your slide, it says that you're going to keep the tribe in the loop in the EIS process. And I just heard one of my council value, my elected official says that Navajo Nation EPAs was told not to make any comments. Why? But yet you showed us up there that the Navajo Nation, or the tribals, are going to be included in these input. So I plead with you, keep it out of our area. Keep it out, and just like the lady before me said, keep it where it's being planned. Keep it there. Thank you.
We're going to go to Terry Sloan, and then we're going to go to Talia Boyd, and then Anna Rondon. This is Terry Sloan.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for allowing me to say a few comments. The reason I'm here is I'm a small town internist. I provided care to Native Americans for 40 years, 30 years in Gallup. I have a long track record of fighting for my patients. And I consider health to be my passion, and it is the passion for me for this community. Radiation itself is simply incompatible with life. It damages all living organisms. We know that biologically. I was the medical director here when the church rock spill occurred. Our entire medical staff was totally aghast that this happened because everybody said it was safe. Accidents wouldn't happen, and yet it really was one of the largest oil spills in the history of this country. The response was inadequate. And currently, actually, I have a list of families that may have been exposed, and that list actually has never been revealed because they won't allow me to reveal it for patient confidentiality issues. But needless to say, one of the things that I've noticed in my practice of internal medicine is a surprising and alarming increase in incidence of renal cell cancer in this region. I've seen more renal cell cancer in each year than most internists see in a lifetime. We don't know exactly why. It's in the Four Corners area, and I actually have a graph. And Senator Udall has this graph, but it really shows a striking increase in the Four Corners area compared with the rest of New Mexico. We don't know why, but we think it may be related to either radiation or petroleum product contamination and exposure. I talk about the unintended consequences of radiation exposure. I had a young man, 18 years old, Star Trek athlete, who came in with a small lesion in the perirectal area. And in fact, what it turned out to be, because he had a nodule in his groin, was an aggressive form of amyloidic melanoma. He died in 3 months. He was a runner for Shiprock High School, and he ran a lot. I mean, he really trained hard. This man had so much courage I've never forgotten, and I actually started running because of him. Needless to say, what we found out later is that the track that he practiced on, in fact, had high radiation levels. And there he ran for years. That's where he practiced. That's where he became good. And so what I'm saying is that once radiation exists, and where it is, it in fact can have unintended consequences. And so what I say is, why New Mexico? Why can't they just keep the waste at local sites that produce it, and they can handle that waste and develop contracts or whatever to take care of it? I think the reason New Mexico is picked is because it's a small state, it's impoverished. They feel like there's wide open areas, just like here, but they don't realize that doctors see patients with cancer, and sometimes we have no explanation. And in the back of our mind is the church rock spill, the radiation exposure in this area. And all I can say is, as part of a physician here, that I really think you should deny this application. So that our state, my state, New Mexico, is not contaminated with radiation inadvertently. Thank you very much.
Okay, is Talia Boyd? And then we're going to go to Anna Rondon, Aaron Lawrence, and Karthik Kavasari.
Yat she Talia Boyd she. Torich eat me is to a hingrini versus chin. Zana slani versus chin do to a hundred $100. Welcome to Indian land. Welcome to Gallup. God, there's so much to say, and I want to reiterate what everybody has said, but we want health studies. We want clean water. We don't want waste. New Mexico has been a nuclear sacrifice state for too long. Yep. We want water testing. We want real answers and real solutions to what we've been dealing with for decades. Our people are sick, and our sacred sites are being desecrated on a daily. A lot by extractive industries, and our people are sick for those reasons. We depend and we know how to utilize the land and the power that exists within it. But when it's compromised by such things as extractive industries and nuclear colonialism, then it compromises ourselves to heal ourselves. I would like the NRC to take that into consideration, the cultural impacts, the significance of the land, the indigenous people that live down there. These are all things that aren't included in the EIS. We want to talk about water, we want to talk about air. Everything that is nuclear is invisible. We can't see it. We don't know how we're being, what pathways we're being exposed. So there's so many things that aren't included that we would like to have real answers to. And again, I'd like to just reiterate and appreciate everything, especially what Council Delegate Jonathan Perry mentioned. Everything that he mentioned was on point. Everything from UNDRIP, the United Declarations of Indigenous Rights of Indigenous People. The transportation routes included the freeway and the railroads. All of our rural communities will be impacted on some way. Again, we don't have any answers as far as emergency response teams if anything should happen. Our communities are very well aware of the detrimental impacts, again, with the 1979 uranium church rock spill. So these are the answers that we want. We want health studies. We want some real solutions. And we don't want the waste. You can keep the waste. We've dealt with enough already. We've been traumatized, and we're trying to heal. We need to heal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Rondon, and then we're going to Aaron Lawrence, and then to Karthik Kavasari.
Greetings, relatives. Yate, Kiaani, Ado, Nakadine, Bush's Chin, my Chase or Tupaha, and my knowledge are Nakadine. As a Diné woman, a private citizen, I wanted to recommend during the Scopie meeting that you let the public know on why this is a rush process and why in 2012 Department of Energy was getting some lawsuits from the utility companies that own this waste on site. So it's because it's going to save $15 billion from the government on lawsuits. I would like to have the NRC explain the history since 1998 when this process began, and also to look at the fracking that's going on in Texas. There's a lot of earthquakes happening, and I think that needs to be looked into as potential threats, because those earthquakes are getting more and more as our earth is becoming more unstable because of the extractive industries. I believe that the communities in Hobbs and Carlsbad strongly oppose this burial site because it's going to contaminate in the future the livestock, the cows, the dairy farms that provide food for this country. So we stand in solidarity with the people in Eunice County, Ada County, and we hope to converse with them and stand in solidarity louder and more forceful. And I appreciate our state representative that speaks so truthfully to this issue. Because New Mexico is tired of being nuked. We're tired of our children being exposed to radioactive nuclides that have infiltrated into our children. Through the Navajo birth cohort study, we have evidence that newborn babies that were in our study have burden in their bodies equivalent to a 30-year-old adult that has lived by a uranium mine waste tailings site. I appreciate our doctor that provided information on one example of why our people are dying, and to Norman Brown, to how our miners, our elders, had mined uranium for 70 years. I've heard that Nuclear Regulatory Commission made a statement that it's immoral to leave the waste at these utility companies' sites. It was immoral. It was filthy. It was like a dirty white man to come to our land and dig up our earth and leave us with filthy drinking water that's contaminated this state, now throughout the country. We will not continue to be silenced with the nuclear regulatory industrial complex. It began here and it's going to end here, and we're going to say no to nuclear waste of any kind. Commission in 1998. They were trying to put waste through here, the same project. And we feel that the privatization of this to these companies, somebody else is getting rich over this $2 billion that's going to go into Eddy County, supposedly. I would like to know who are these politicians in Washington and in the state. So with that,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is Aaron Lorenz.
Hi, my name is Erin Lorenz, and I'm a physician that works here in the Gallup community. I want to make clear that I speak on behalf of myself and not for any institution. Folks in this community were reassured that uranium mining was safe 70 years ago. Turns out that the mining itself and the residual nuclear waste has taken a toll on this community in the form of kidney disease, lung disease, cancer. There's also evidence that in utero exposure affects the most vulnerable among us. There is radioactive nuclear waste in the water, in the dust, the air, the livestock, and even in the plants grown on Navajo Nation. This is a direct result of private companies and our own complicity prioritizing financial gain and winning the nuclear arms race above the health and safety of the indigenous communities who still reside here. How do you remove uranium, radon, arsenic, lead, and other heavy metals from every part of your environment? If you have an answer, perhaps our time would be better spent cleaning up the mess we already have. And if you don't have the answer, maybe we should consider the wisdom in welcoming more nuclear waste into our community. 2 generations after the commencement of uranium mining on Navajo Nation, many of the mining companies no longer exist. And those tasked with cleaning up the mines have not done so, as you have heard from several members of those communities this evening. What will happen in 100 years? Will Holtec still be around? What happens if Holtec can't find a storage place in Yucca Mountain or something like that? Who is responsible? I'm not asking for myself, I'm asking for our kids and our grandkids. Thank you.
Thank you. This is part of it. And then we'll go to Teresita Cañana, Catherine McGill-Peters, and Joe Tacko.
Hi, I'm Karthik Kavasari. I'm a family physician that works in this community. Looks like we have a handful of physicians here. I'd like to, first of all, just kind of highlight the fact that the NRC came here and we've spent half of this time talking about the mess that's already here, rather than the mess that's about to come or potentially come. I want the NRC to pay attention to that, because we don't know how else to get a hold of you. We don't know how to tell you that we have fears in this community that uranium waste is already here, and there's a preponderance of evidence at this point that there are ill effects to the health of this community, to my patients. I think Talia Boyd brought up the Navajo birth cohort, which has yet to be published. It's a study that's coming out with researchers from UNM. And we'll be finding out a lot of things about the extent of exposure in this community, and then hopefully some of the health effects that are happening because of it. But so far, in the preliminary results that everybody here can find online, we know that 83% of dust collected in this area has uranium in it. That about 15% of pregnant women, fathers, and then their infants have a urine uranium level greater than the 95th percentile. Among many other things. And there are animal studies, population studies, and in vitro studies that show that there are links of uranium exposure to kidney disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases. And then there are a lot of questions still, like Dr. Sloan brought up. I've also seen way more kidney cancer here than I ever saw before, and I can't explain it. It's a total mystery to me. Well, maybe it's not a mystery to everybody, but we don't have that smoking gun proof. And so, while I have the ear of the NRC, I ask for help with cleanup, research, and then of course to help prevent another disaster. So that's really why we're here, or at least why we were brought here. Nothing disproves a scientific fact, or what we consider a fact today, like time. And I think Mervyn it was, who brought up the fact that the half-life of uranium is 4.5 billion years. That's not a length of time that I can even comprehend. And I just don't think that there's any way that we can safely store the waste from uranium that will last for that long. I think that's just insane to think that we can't even pretend that that's a possibility. But he did say, how many years was it? It wasn't 300 years, it was less, right? So I don't know what the plan is for after that, but I can't imagine that it stretches 4.5 billion years. What I do know is that there's plenty to clean up, there's plenty of work to do, and bringing on more waste into this state is it's an absolute travesty. Last little point I want to make, I got invited out to the Redwater Pond community. There have been a few speakers here from there. And like they're saying, they're sandwiched between 3 radioactive sites. The EPA is involved in one of them. And the plan is to move radioactive waste from one place, move it down the road, and dump it into another place that's technically outside the Navajo Nation. It's incredible to me that we're able to transport waste from across the country, but we can't even move it out of this site here down the road.
Teresita. And then Catherine McGill-Peters and Joe Tacko.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Teresita Kiana, and I come from the Redwater Pond Road Community Association. And our community is half a mile away from 2 uranium mines and a mile away from a uranium mill. I have dealt with uranium issues my entire life, and it started before I was even born. So my children have to deal with that also. So now I've seen differences between my children. I was away for school during one pregnancy. My daughter was completely okay. My son, on the other hand, I was at home
with the entire pregnancy and being born with a hole in his heart. I mean, how can you not see some evidence like that? I mean, that's concrete evidence. I didn't do anything else out of the ordinary. I didn't change my diet. I didn't do anything different. I was just in my community. So now my kids all have to deal with this. We have impacts in our health, our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, and it impacts our environmental health. It infringes onto our native cultures and our native religion. We no longer can have our traditional use of our herbs. We can't even practice certain things that we used to do, because morning prayers used to be offered to the east in the morning, and for our community, the east is a big pile of uranium. Why do we want to offer prayers to that? So, I mean, even our rights of freedom of religion is infringed upon just because of uranium issues. And all over New Mexico, we don't need more uranium issues brought into the state of New Mexico. We're not a dumping site. This is a beautiful place. We've had enough. I've watched my grandmother die from pulmonary fibrosis. I basically watched her suffocate. And she used to work. She was just a janitor. She wasn't even like her work inside the plant. She was just cleaning their office. And I watched her suffocate and die that way. How many lives do we have to lose to uranium issues? When is it enough? How much is a human body? How much is a human life? How much do you guys need? You know, isn't that enough? You've taken my grandmothers. You've taken some of my grandfathers. My aunts and uncles are suffering from it. And I suffer from it too. My children are suffering from it too. I've lost 3 babies. I didn't even get to see these 3 beautiful children because of that. I had a whole statement prepared, you know, but now I have to go. I have to just condense everything into what I really wanted to say on my heart. Because I have to go home, because my other son has medical issues that need to be addressed. So thank you, and just please, I mean, this is a plea to just say no, no more. We can't take this anymore. Like my father said, we suffer and you can't see it. You can't see what we're suffering from. It's been lifelong, so please, just hear our pleas. Understand that we don't want it. Thank you.
Catherine and Joe Peters, and then we're going to go to Joe Pacquiao, and I apologize that I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I do not support this in any way. This seems to be a pattern that happens over and over around here, that companies come from other places. They say, oh, we're going to make a lot of money, we're going to bring jobs, and we're going to help people. And instead, people around here get environmental disasters, and those companies disappear, and we're left to deal with problems. I'm worried about the risk of derailment, because my mother used to work for a railroad, and I know they derail all the time. I'm worried about the harm to the environment. I'm worried about who's going to pay for the cleanup when there's an accident, because there will be one. I guarantee it.
That's right.
Okay, we, as people keep saying, we have a lot of old uranium mines around here. We have people on the Navajo Nation with no water because they can't drink the drinking water where they live because it's contaminated with uranium. I'm involved in this, well, I'm not involved in it, but I'm trying to help raise money for this project to build some well out in the Eastern Navajo Nation. And it's going to cost $500,000. And they have to dig thousands of feet into the ground to find water that is not contaminated. So that is wrong, that people in the United States live today without water because their water is contaminated. And there's no one out there helping those people. You've got the federal government and the state, and everyone's arguing about who should build these wells. And meanwhile, we have some charity that normally digs wells in Africa that has come to the Navajo Nation to try to help people get water. And that's ridiculous in the richest nation in the world. So I'm opposed to this, and I just want to say that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Pronounce your last name for the transfer.
Hello, everybody. My name's Joe McCall. I've lived on the Navajo Reservation for the past 18 years. And everybody's made some great points up here. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, though, is that if a project like this is approved, whether it's here in New Mexico, or Utah, or Nevada, that's going to be seen as a solution to a real problem for the nuclear industry. And the uranium mining companies and private investors are going to see this as a green light for expanding uranium mining. And there are uranium, New Mexico's, we're going to have to deal with a whole other era of new uranium mines popping up all over the place.
Yep.
Right now, that's been kind of held back, but things are set to go up, and then Fukushima happened, and that kind of slowed things down. But I'm just really concerned that if this kind of solution and goes forward, we're going to see a lot more uranium mining popping up all over again, and have a lot more to deal with. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Percal. Our next speakers are Hamleen Yazzie, Simone Jones, Holly Harris-Stravers, and Janine Yazzie. So is Hamleen? Hamleen?
It's two R's. Harolee. I apologize. I run my R's together, so I am not a ham.
But Hamleen.
She was actually before me.
Okay.
I'll take her spot.
Thank you for clarifying.
Hamleen, thank you.
Gat ethen Shay Haroleen Yazzie Chiado Chenjikane Kitachine Shlo Chenjikane Shlo Kitachini the Shia Setnajin the Shido Tutsani the Shinaba. Just a few points. As said earlier, as a lot of, I think, professionals that came up to the podium this evening to speak, this is somewhat my profession as well, is NEPA. I work as an environmental protection specialist, but I here am representing myself as a private citizen, as well as a mother. Given what was displayed earlier on the slideshow, it's my understanding that this is basically a yes/no proposition. That the application has been submitted and is being evaluated for an approval or disapproval, and that doesn't necessarily open its way to alternatives. Most processes that I've seen, there's a purpose and need, and in this case, interim storage of spent rods in some location that would be feasible for storage. I would assume that that would be the purpose and need from the NRC, and meeting that need would be based on economic or technical viability. So again, I'm not too familiar with the NRC process, but that's my take, is this is a yes or no, approval, disapproval, and alternatives, whether they're technically or economically viable, or reason for dismissal. It would have been nice to know that in the presentation to the public so they understood exactly what NRC is making a decision on, and if it's a yes or no versus alternatives with purpose and need. Secondly, the application is riddled with data. I see how, I think made by Councilman earlier, that there was very little information presented to the public to formulate a very detailed scoping comment. You guys know locations, you know the sites that you're going to be receiving the lots from, potentially, what kind of waste you'll be receiving. Is it, I don't know, plutonium? Is it, I have no idea what you all may potentially be storing. And each of those activities have different half-lives. So what does that mean? Human health risk assessments, this is what I want in the record. Human health risk assessments that take into consideration the synergistic elements described earlier. We as natives, we eat, hunt, sleep, smoke, digest, almost anything and everything from prairie dogs to yucca plants. We have no shame. And we do have no shame because we had to survive. And survival does mean using what we have. So the synergistic impacts associated to human health should be considered in the human health risk assessment, as well as an ecological health risk assessment. Like I said, we still eat prairie dogs. It's not anything new to our family. I was raised in prairie dogs. Also eat sheep, ate horse. What else we eat? What are those little ones? What else we eat? What are those little ones that you use for your teeth? When they're cheating. I don't know what they're called, but yeah. Okay, the alternatives. Okay, the alternatives. Proponents provide the application, and I would like to see those applications in Window Rock and Crown Point, as well as the Gallup Library, in addition to the ones that were listed earlier. Seismic activity related to fracking, how does that impact the area? I know that they're looking at that. Transportation corridor is important, but most importantly, I think, as said earlier, we've taken uranium, you use the energy, and now you're sending the waste back. You don't see a nuclear power plant on Navajo at all, or in New Mexico, period. Those are my comments.
Thank you. There were some relevant comments there that I'm going to ask Brian Smith from the NRC to come up and just tell you about the NRC's efforts with communicating with the Navajo Nation. Go ahead, Brian. And then we're going to go on to Simone Jones and the rest of the speakers.
All right, so I'll be quick. Jonathan Perry was one of the first speakers. Hopefully he's still here.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. Jonathan Perry, council delegate for the Navajo Nation, was one of the earlier speakers. He's back there. You may have seen me walk out with him because I wanted to follow up on one of the statements that he made regarding limitations on the amount of discussions that can be held on this project within his nation. We have sent a letter, we the NRC have sent a letter to the Navajo Nation as part of our consultation process, which is kind of just the opposite effect. We're reaching out to them to communicate with them on this project. So there was nothing in the letter asking that they limit any type of discussion on this project. So I just wanted to try to clarify that. So if anybody has any questions on that.
Okay, let's go. Let's go on to, thank you. Thank you, Brian. This is Simone.
Ja, der Arzt, she Simone Jones in Share, touch it me as lots of Jimmy Bush's I'm here as a mother, as a citizen. I don't live too far from here. I live just a couple blocks from here, as a matter of fact. And also my profession, I just put it out there, I'm in Indian Real Estate Services. But I'm trying to kind of keep my comments here to kind of input that you're seeking. First off, your materials in Navajo are I think your OCR might have gone really bad. It's completely unreadable, not understandable. It has number digits. So you might want to correct that kind of going forward if there's any future scoping sessions. As far as local issues, everybody has pointed out Church Rock. I actually live in, was born and raised in Lupton, which is a community just downriver. I went to school in Sanders. They found arsenic in the water recently. I didn't realize this happened until I went to college. Recently, everyone was passing away of cancer, David Bowie and whatnot. I reached for my neck one day and I found my thyroid was enlarged. Had that, biopsied, all of that. And one of the things the doctor asked me was, where are you getting additional exposure? Are you using your microwave? All these different things. And I thought, well, just look at my backyard. I think you guys are really remiss in not really understanding just the extent of this AUM mine cleanup project that we have out here. We also have, as people pointed out, we have a community north-south and to the east of us. It's a huge community of the Navajo Reservation. Certain projects that we have ongoing out there, such as the Navajo Gallup water supply to bring some to waters to community. It's a huge environmental justice issue out here, I think that you've heard. One of the things, me living just a couple blocks from here, that I'm very concerned about, hearing about 10,000 transports, at some point in this project. That's like 10,000 shots at the wheel. This town, we really have limited responses. We have limited hospitals. We have 2 here. We have 1 in Fort Defiance. Actually, my son got sick on me about a year ago. It was very serious, and we almost didn't transport him to Albuquerque because of fog. I mean, and we're talking about a huge community. In terms of historic properties, we have Chaco. 90% of the Navajo Reservation has not been archaeological surveyed. We've heard of the Co-Talkers just down the road is Fort Wingate, where a lot of them were trained. South of us is a community called Zuni, where it's actually the point of contact with the Spanish conquistadors. So we have a lot of history here. The other thing that I just want you to just be very aware of, again, is just the fact that we don't have a lot of facilities out here. People have talked about deaths in the air. We don't have improved roads. We have a lot of earthen roads out here, and people drive on that, and that's that particulate that comes up every day. You see in the community, you drive here in Gallup, you see it hang. You drive out to Albuquerque, you see it hang. I've lived in this community my whole life. I've probably lived along the route in my whole life. And one of the things I've also noticed is the I-40 traffic's got really bad. You used to be able to just drive on it, hit your cruise control. You cannot do that anymore. The truck traffic is immense. Railways, I live again just up the road. You hear it night and day coming in there. And I think about it. I think, what if something, was to happen? You hear that, my kids hear this all the time. I say Murphy's Law. If something's going to happen, Murphy's Law. I sometimes game Murphy's Law. Sometimes I think, okay, if I go to this light and pull my phone out, it's going to turn green. That happens sometimes. But again, as a mother, as a citizen, as a person in this community, I just really implore you, to really consider alternatives. Like my friend and colleague had pointed out, we don't know a lot of this information. Where is the source of this material? What is the material? I think you really have to take a look at this community. You have to take a look at who's here in terms, part of the input you're seeking is historic properties. There's 500,000 members of my tribe. We're not replaceable. And we live to the north, to the south, and to the east of Gallup. And so I really implore you to consider that in your decision making as you go forward. And I hope, as citizens of the world, that we can find different terms of, ways of energy. But unfortunately, our needs and our wants kind of run this engine. We really need to change our ways. But again, thank you for this opportunity to give you comments. And
Thank you.
That's it. I'm under time.
Thank you. Thank you, Simone. Is Holly here? This is Holly, and next we're going to go to Janine, and then to Darren Yazio and Denise Brown.
My comments will be brief. I wasn't planning on speaking because I don't like doing this.
and admire how effectively and eloquently the rest of you have spoken. But I like to be a good student, so my comments, in order to be relevant, fall under local issues. Local issue being we have children here who cannot speak for themselves. In 2015, I believe, give or take a year, the Annie E. Casey Foundation concluded that the children of New Mexico are ranked 50th of 50 states in child health and well-being. I am a pediatric nurse practitioner in Gallup, and I'm a mother. Families in New Mexico, as you've heard reiterated repeatedly, which is redundant, but anyway, reiterated, currently and historically contend with a disproportionately high degree of economic, social, and environmental adversity. And I see the physical, emotional, psychological, and developmental challenges faced by families and children in my work every day. On behalf of the children of New Mexico who cannot be here to speak for themselves, who cannot begin to comprehend the threats that this would potentially bring to our lives, and who face an unjust degree of adversity, preventable threats already to the realization of their full human potential, do not permit the shipment of nuclear waste to New Mexico. And I would also appeal to you, the NRC, to listen carefully to Sister Rosemary Cicchini and the others that are proposing wisely not to allow this experiment to threaten any community in this country. Thank you.
Is Janine here? Here's Janine.
يعطي شكرا شرنا شيء جنين نتاشر يازي يمشي تسا أنا دنا شاك كدنا نجوج دشمان تنا جنين شلون دكتورتي إن بششتين لنا دشتشي دوزك دشنالت. I don't think I can say anything better than what has already been said. Coming here, it's always great to see our community come out and engage in these issues. And the power is right here among ourselves, speaking to each other and creating these solutions, because I'm tired of these processes. I'm tired of coming to scoping meetings and being given a plan and all of these nice printed out pamphlets that explain how great these projects are, and also stipulate that these guys are going to determine what the significant issues are that are pertinent to environmental review, or what is relevant in terms of the comments being made here. All I can say is, how dare you, a private company, come in without knowing the history or the lived experience of the people here and regurgitate these promises about jobs and how good it's going to be for our economy and how safe your technology is. We haven't cleaned up the problem here. That's the overlying theme here. You're not the solution. You're part of the issue. Now, until you can show us what your plan is to not only clean up what has already been done to our communities and to listen to the concerns of everyone that stood up here, asking for the health impact studies, asking for the ecological studies, asking for you to understand our lived experiences and value that for what it is, and not determine in some other city or some other place what is significant or not. Until you can do that, these scoping periods aren't going to achieve what is just. I actually really want to hear what your definition is for socio-economic and environmental justice, because nothing else besides the term looks at any type of awareness or illustrates any type of awareness of what that actually means. We're tired of being your waste or your expendable communities and your backyard for the waste to be transported. We're tired of hearing that we're dealing with these issues because nuclear power is so safe. We're on our way to transition to renewable energy, and we're tired of hearing these promises that we need to continue to accommodate these technologies that have devastated and destroyed our communities, our public health, and our environment, and the futures of our children, because our babies are being born with uranium in their bodies, and that can't be taken out. So don't come back here unless you really do have a plan to take into consideration the concerns that are being shared here. And unless you understand that it's not about tribal consultation, it's about free, prior, and informed consent. And unless you get that, this project is not going through. And we're not going to settle for participating in a scoping period. We're used to this fight, and we know with years of experience and data of what happens when we allow these projects to come into our areas, and we're not going to allow it anymore. Thank you.
And then we'll go to Denise Brown.
I'm going to take off my glasses so I don't see you guys. You know, stage right and everything. Hello, Yate. The translation of Yate is good. If this plan follows through, it will not be good. It will still continue to get worse. My understanding is that we have no nuclear power plants in New Mexico. It is sound assertive that we receive the consequences rather than the benefits of terms of nuclear power instead of having low energy costs. 87% of water in New Mexico is supplied by groundwater, 13% of which is river water. Nuclear storage underground puts 87% of our water at jeopardy. And with the Farmington incident, it already tarnished our DNA. I'm a victim of that DNA because I have an enlarged head that I was born with. And if I wasn't born in a big city such as Phoenix, they would have done an operation that would have hindered my intelligence and hindered my perceived life. There's still nuclear material hidden in these lands, and as a gentleman earlier discussed how if we open this storage containment, there's going to open the floodgates for companies wanting to mine more nuclear materials in these lands, putting people more at risk. The Holtec CIS description says that they will have a total of 10,000 nuclear waste in terms of canisters. I don't know what a canister is. Is that in tons? What are they going to carry in it? How much and what is going to be in those canisters, and how long will it be in our communities? Half-lives of different materials have different half-lives. So we could be looking at plutonium, which has the longest, or we could have other ones that have half-lives of 30 years. There's still a decent amount of time, which can hinder our ability to recuperate and heal ourselves at that time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Denise Brown. And then we're going to go to Kathleen Morstay.
Hello. Denise Brown Misha, Yani do Tabar Fascist Station, Dina So hello, good evening everybody. My name is Denise Brown. I am speaking as part of the Nuclear Issues Study Group. You may have seen us around at the flea market and around town flyering to get as many people here as possible, but also I'm speaking as a person, Navajo person who was born and raised in Gallup, New Mexico. So this issue is highly concerning, and the reason why I'm here is because as a resident, the transportation of this waste is unacceptable, as many of my relatives and community members have stated. The fact that you're barely consulting with the Navajo Nation, I think, is very unprofessional, as well as the unprofessional presentation of your font in Navajo. That's unacceptable, as my relatives honor and our native language and need to understand this issue. But in addition to that, indigenous peoples in the New Mexico region, such as Acoma and Laguna, have also been affected by the uranium legacy, and you should also seek consultation with them as well. And the fact that the DOT has not been a part of this discussion and has led to the inability for us to speak about the transportation risks, because what is proposed, as Anton and John Heaton have said in their comments, is that it will mostly be transported by rail. And the rail system that goes through Gallup is one of the few in New Mexico, so it's highly likely and highly probable that we will be affected. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I want to say. Thank you so much, NRC, for coming here, and I hope you take into consideration all of what has been said today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Leona, would you like to come up and talk? Leona Morgan.
Good evening. She Leona Morgan in She Twarich Amy Nishlitz and Bithni Bushichin Kiani Dashiche Twargini Dashinella. I grew up close to here. This is not really my community, but I went to high school here. And I just, first of all, I actually want to thank the NRC for coming here, because they only scheduled 3 scoping meetings in the vicinity of the proposed site. And so I think a lot of you haven't really learned about this project, and I think that this is the first time a lot of you are hearing about it. Unfortunately, we didn't get a presentation about the project as much as people would have liked. So I would say, first of all, go to more communities along the transport route, as many as possible, and make sure you include a proper presentation, something akin to what the Holtec folks presented at the Radioactive and Hazardous Materials Interim Committee last Friday. We need something like that, with proper translation. So we have more Diné speakers here, not as many Spanish speakers. So we need more translators, we need more of the materials translated, we need more announcements about the meetings. And so there's many communities along the transport routes. This is just one of them. And like Denise just said, this is a highly likely route that you all are going to allow Holtec to bring over 10,000 canisters across the nation. We don't know how many canisters are going to come through Gallup. And at one of the meetings in southeast New Mexico, we're talking about the radiation that can come out of the transport casks. And what was said is, oh, it's just an X-ray. We don't want additional X-rays. You know, we didn't sign up for that. We didn't consent to that. Like Janine mentioned, free, informed, and prior consent. We were not priorly informed properly of this project. In these communities across the nation, you all need to do proper outreach. We're doing your job. We're doing all of the outreach to the communities that have not been included. And so I think this is New Mexico. How many states is the waste going to go through? How many communities? And I mentioned several times at the previous meetings some of the impacts to indigenous peoples. If you go along this railroad, you're going to pass by 2 of our sacred mountains. And like in the DOE study that says if there's a leak or an accident, it could contaminate a 42 square mile area. You need to study the impacts to all of the sacred places that indigenous peoples hold important to all of us. We're just one tribe. And so, and Teresita mentioned the traditional plants. And I think that's something that needs to be included in your environmental impact study. It's not just the plants and the animals, but the traditional medicines that we all use still today. And so I know a lot of people spoke about uranium mining, and you're probably going to say, oh, this isn't fit within this, it's not germane to what we're here for, you know, but we have lived with this already. We already know the impacts from radiation exposure. And as you heard tonight, I'm sure you're going to hear many more of these types of comments the more and more you go out there, because I know you have another meeting tomorrow and we're going to hear from people in Albuquerque, but this is really ground zero. This is where uranium came from. So they took it out and they made bombs and they made electricity, but then now you're trying to send the waste back to our communities. This is environmental racism, and it needs to stop. You all need to abide by the environmental justice executive order you all need to consider what Council Delegate Perry stated, that we have a law against the transport of any radioactive materials through our traditional homelands. The Navajo Nation has the Radioactive Materials Transportation Act of 2012, and as I already stated at a previous meeting, this needs to be respected under the Organization of American States Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Our laws are valid, and just because the United States doesn't legally have to notify us of any rail transport, that doesn't mean it's okay, and that doesn't mean that the people will stand up for this. We do not consent. So thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Leona. Now we have Geneva Peter.
Good evening. My name is Geneva Peter, and I'm with in the Chamber of Commerce. I'm one of the board members, and also I represent some of the business organizations on the reservation. Just hearing my community here, and earlier I had the pleasure to meet and talk with every one of you within NRC and Holtec, and giving me the brief information of what I was looking for. Not knowing that there was so much impact by my community here. I think you really need to take this into consideration more in detail, just by emphasizing, looking from my point of view. There needs to be a lot of workshops that needs to be done. I mean, if you're looking at the whole community from I-40, there's a reservation going to where the transportation is going to be. And you have to emphasize those things. I mean, it's got to take at least one day to do all this, training and letting people know what more in detail what this whole project is about. But then I look at the other point where transportation-wise, I dealt with trucking for so long. I grew up in trucking. There's a lot of scenario issues. You got to deal with the federal motor carrier, USDOT. These things are impacted by what we have to go by our guidelines. But more or less to say, hauling these hazardous waste is very, very unsafe. You look at the structure where transportation has to come from one side to the destination. We can't really say it's going to be a safe issue for these transportation to be followed. You have to look at these scenarios. You may be impacted by the commercial carrier or people that are just on the roadway. These are the things that you guys have to take into consideration. I dealt a lot with the federal motor carrier with hazardous. A lot of impact issues that had occurred on the roadway, even on I-40. These are the things that you really have to look in consideration as well. The railroad, not too long ago we had a derailment on the east side of Gallup here. We say that it's going to be a safe issue for carrying these radioactive wastes on rail, but you have to really take into consideration of what all the communities are talking about. I was born and raised here in Gallup, and I have all my relatives in Church Walk, and not knowing, having to hear them come up here, I kind of had shed tears when one of the ladies spoke. When you guys are all sitting here as a committee of NRC and Holtec, think about the community of our part. You look at the impact of what we did with Standing Rock. That was a huge, huge amount of concerns that we had. Same with the King Gold Mine here. There is so many impact that you have to take in consideration. And moving this forward, you have to let the community understand, they may be opposed to it. I'm kind of opposing to it as well now, because hearing all my community here, I wasn't really familiar with the nuclear waste, how much it was really impacted, but now I know. So having the diligence say, there's so many, a lot of my native people here, if they decide to oppose this, you have to be ready. So you're going to take upon a lot of my indigenous people. We're all sisters across the United States. There's brothers that we're all in clan. And we're going to stand as one against it if they decided not for you guys to do it. So you have to really take that in consideration as us tribes. We stand as one nation. We support one another from different tribes. So, you know, you have to really do your research and take it in consideration communicating with a lot of our Native people. So that's what I just kind of wanted to brief out to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Janine. I just wanted to make sure, I think I called Catherine Morse. Did Catherine come up? Oh, come on up. This is Catherine Morse.
Yate, Catherine Morse Inishia, Ye Twati Inishia, House or Dashi Change, Ojibwe Do Sunale, I was born and raised and educated in California, but my traditional homeland is an hour north of here in Crystal, New Mexico. I was born with the homing pigeon gene, so after I got educated to become a physician, I decided to come here and serve my people. So I work at Gallup Indian Medical Center in family medicine, in palliative care and pain. And I am extremely concerned about this proposal. As a physician, now I do not represent Gallup Indian Medical Center. I am representing myself, who is an employee there, and what I have seen. We have seen a number of nasopharyngeal cancers. Cancers that are usually pretty rare, but they are a known consequence of uranium exposure. And they are in people, we've seen them in people too young to have worked in the mines. Not only that, we see very high rates of lung diseases, COPD, pulmonary fibrosis, asthma, etc. And almost nobody smokes, okay? And we also see a lot of inflammatory diseases, things like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and I could go on and on and on. Also kidney disease. These are things that reflect a higher level of inflammation in the body, something that uranium can cause. But the problem is we're working really hard to take care of patients. They're very complicated. We're not investigators. What we don't have is the link. We have suspicions, but we don't have a link. So what I'm saying is that we do not have enough health data regarding what's already been done here. My understanding from visiting with the folks from the Redwater Pond community north of Church Rock, is they're sitting with their homes. They've lived there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. There's mine tailings there. The wind is blowing. There still has not been adequate cleanup. There has been higher than usual levels of uranium found in the urine of babies, per the Navajo Health Study. And also, from what I understand, is that when the Church Rock spill happened, there was a lot of debris that landed in the Puerco River, the wash, and that was dredged up and placed in children's playgrounds here in the community. These are the things that I have heard, in addition to what I've experienced. And to ask that this community take on additional risks, to me, is untenable. When we don't even really have the data that shows what actually happened, we just know that we have a lot of health problems here that are pretty suspicious. As safe as Holtec wants, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission wants to picture and paint a picture of how safe this can be, there's always something that can happen. There's always risks. And that's what I'm concerned about. And as Janine Yazzie had pointed out, what I'm noticing is that these types of risks are often falling on communities of color, people at economic and racial disadvantages. And that as well is untenable to me. I am for the health of my people. And what I'm hearing and seeing is extremely concerning.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. I'm going to go to Ace Hoffman right now, and then to Sharon Hoffman. This is Ace Hoffman.
Hi, I'm from Carlsbad, California, which is about 15 miles from San Onofre. And in the 1990s, we moved there, and I almost immediately began opposing that plant. And every time I tried to bring up the waste problem, I was told it's solved. Yucca Mountain is going to take the waste. Now, here we are, Yucca Mountain is not moving forward really at all. And if it were to move forward, there's over 300 problems that have been identified, and some of them are absolutely unsolvable, like volcanoes in the area, and earthquakes in the area, and underground water moving in the area. When we spent the night here hearing about the problems with uranium mining in the Navajo Nation, and I understand how bad that is. When they use the uranium in a reactor, it makes plutonium. Now, plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years. Uranium-235 has a half-life of 700 million years, and uranium-238 of 4.5 billion years. Most of the waste is 238. But that plutonium, and there's dozens of pounds of it in each of these containers, is about 30,000 times more radioactive than the uranium-235, because you just simply do the math. 24,000 years versus 700,000 years. Multiply it by, I guess, about 30,000. Also, there's all these fission products. And they're 1,000, 10,000 times more radioactive than plutonium. And they can be bone seekers and thyroid seekers. I had bladder cancer. Never smoked cigarettes in my life. My wife had breast cancer. She never smoked anything in her life either. Cancer is a terrible thing. We were listening to a book about what they discovered after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were dropped. And they assured the soldiers that went in to study it that there was absolutely no danger from the radiation. And they said, and this was written, in 1946, what we were listening to on audiobooks on the way over here to the Painted Forest, the Painted Desert and the Pine Forest, that there was no indication of any radiation damage. Everyone that was killed by the blast or the overpressure or the glass flying and so forth. But we know now that thousands and thousands of Japanese people were killed by the radiation. So if you're going to let this stuff come, don't think that it's just the uranium coming back to you. It is literally 10 million times worse than the radiation. You do not want this stuff here. And yeah, you're just going to give a green light to the industry, which doesn't need to, we don't need this industry anymore. There's plenty of wind and solar and every other kind of energy that we need. So don't green light this. Now, I'm very briefly going to mention this book that you can get. I have a bunch of copies and you're welcome to take one. I've been studying this issue. In 1979, I had a comedy routine about 3 Mile Island, so it's been a long time. Some of the people I've worked with or know or were on my newsletter list are Helen Caldecott, John Goffman, Ernest Sternglass. These are all people that I've known. When I got bladder cancer, I decided I better dump everything I know into a book, just in case. So that's how this book came about, and just take a copy. And by the way, if I have just a little bit more time, there's another solution. I was at the Atomic Testing Museum in Nevada a couple of years ago, and one of the guys that had been working on the test, they were testifying about their experiences at the test. And he had studied carefully all the electromagnetic pulse and all that other stuff that comes up. And he has a solution that requires lasers to reduce the radioactivity of this waste, and that has to happen before it ever gets here. And the last point is, absolutely the last point is, with all that 10,000 containers, which of course is 20,000 transport, to here and back. Well, probably when it's here, they're going to want to reprocess it and use it in more reactors. So
That's right.
you don't want that.
Okay, thank you, Ed. And this is Sharon. And next we're going to go to Edith Hood.
Good evening. This is really an awesome hearing in the sense that the people who have spoken tonight know a lot about the issues. The bad news is you know about them for the worst possible reasons. You've experienced them yourselves as physicians, you've seen them. The average community does not have this level of knowledge. And I want to emphasize to the NRC that the community that has this personal knowledge is very much against anything nuclear in their community. It's been said at least once tonight. I think practically everything I thought of has been said at least once tonight. But I think this is actually the most important thing. We have to stop making waste. As long as we're making more, this is going to impact some community somewhere. And it is very fair to say this is not our problem, we do not want it, but nobody wants it. And we all have to stop. And then, maybe then, we can look at solutions. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I noticed in the NRC presentation that there's a distinction between environmental and safety concerns. And I truly do not understand that because the environmental impacts impact the safety of the people and the wildlife and the plants that live here. So we're asking, are there endangered species? Yeah, humans. There are a lot of humans, and they are being endangered by this project. And there is no way this is environmentally responsible. Moving the waste is irresponsible. Making more waste is irresponsible. Putting it in the location that Holtec is proposing is irresponsible. None of this makes any sense, and it's just going to facilitate more nuclear waste. We have to stop this. And I want to end with something else that we heard in the audiobooks today. We heard about the Trinity tests. And before the Trinity test, nobody knew what would happen, and the scientists had a betting pool about what was going to happen, what was going to be the yield of that bomb. And Enrico Fermi, who knows something, was willing to bet anybody that it would end life on the planet as we know it. And to some degree he was correct, right? Because we all have radioactivity in us and there's a lot of health effects from that. But more importantly, they were gambling in multiple senses on something that they did not know what the result would be. And the nuclear industry is still doing that. And we do not have to put up with this. They have to stop. Thank you.
Edith Hood. And then we're going to go to Susan Skerritt.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Edith Hood, Emma, and I am from the Ratwater Pond community. And when I listen to all of this, there are a lot of you that are very informed, and I think some of us are going to have to educate your friends, your family, the people. And my question here is, where is the human rights aspect of all of what we're talking about? Where is it? All of us have a right to live in a safe and supportive environment in America. Sometimes I feel like we're living in a third world here, especially with all the contamination that we live in back home in my backyard. The next one I'm going to ask is, where and what is your backup plan in case of an emergency? Is it going to be sitting under some dust somewhere? Where is it? And so we, the people of the community here, are very informed and we need to educate everyone else. All I ask is not in my backyard again. Thank you.
Thank you. What an honor to follow Edith Hood. I'm still shaking from Teresita Kiana's comments that made a lot of us cry. The impact to her family has been, I don't know how anyone can consider approving a project after hearing her testimony. My name is Sue Skirman. I've lived in New Mexico for 25 years and I'm a cancer survivor. You know, when you get cancer, they don't tell you how you got it. You ask and they say, well, we don't know. So you wonder, but you don't know. I want to talk about cumulative impacts because that is one of the categories. I know you're scoping for environmental impact statement and I think cumulative impacts could shut this proposal down on itself, just by itself. Uranium mines, cancer, abandoned uranium mines, tailings piles, tailings spill at Church Rock, Los Alamos National Labs, plutonium in the Rio Grande, the canyons, the kick and roll disposal method, right? There's a lot of contamination in the canyons at Llano. Trinity site, the test without consent of the local population. They had no idea what that explosion was that morning. Generations of downwinders with health impacts. The stockpile of over 2,000 nuclear warheads at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. The mixed waste landfill. They don't know what's in there. They know there's radioactive waste from the Cold War era in barrels that were dumped into unlined trenches. That's right above our aquifer. I live in Albuquerque. The WIP site, Waste Isolation Pilot Plant near Carlsbad with transuranic waste from atomic bomb making, which after only 15 years had an underground fire and a radioactive release. This is cumulative impacts. If you add up all the environmental impacts that New Mexico has already experienced, I find it baffling that New Mexico could be considered for additional impacts. No matter how safe you and Holtec make this project appear to be, there will be environmental impacts to New Mexico and to New Mexicans. And the CIS facility would impact the people of Gallup because of the deadly waste traveling through here on the trains. We heard trains while we've been sitting here tonight. They're so often through Gallup. And trains have accidents. A few weeks ago, we saw 10 train cars derailed in Odessa, Texas alone. It was the day of the NRC hearing in Hobbs. If the NRC considers the cumulative impacts of this project on New Mexico, you will deny this license application. We don't want it, and we do not consent. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last speaker that we had for tonight, and usually what we do is have the NRC senior official, Ms. Brian Smith, close the meeting out. I just wanted to thank you from a facilitator's point of view for all of your courtesy and your patience and your comments tonight. And I have to thank Knife Wing and his colleagues, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think this is the best place that we've done a meeting, okay? And so thanks to you, Nightwing. And I'll give you Brian.
All right, first off, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight again. At least the microphones work tonight. All of our previous meetings, we've had microphone issues. Luckily, they work well tonight. Thank you again for coming out tonight. We appreciate all the comments that we heard. We have not made a decision on this project. This is just the very beginning of our review, both the safety review, security review, and environmental review. They're all taken into consideration together, and ultimately a decision will be made at the end of the overall project review. We are doing one more meeting. It's tomorrow night in Albuquerque. So we look forward, I'm sure we'll probably see some of you again. So appreciate your comments. Have a good evening. Thank you very much.